What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Men's Journal Everyday Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sarraille. Hey, we've got a guest who I've known about for a long time because I've listened to their music. I was just telling him I listened to it in a combat zone. And it's funny how you tie music to certain things. You know, I had a playlist when I was flying into missions that I'd listened to, which actually isn't all that, let's say it's frowned upon. I should be listening to the radio, which I was, but that I'd also listen to that playlist on Extract on the helicopters when I was coming back. And that was Simple Man, the rendition that Shinedown did. Brent Smith, frontman and vocalist, is with us today. Brent, I can't thank you enough for joining us, man.
Thank you, man. I'm super pumped to be here. Again, thank you for your service, man. Appreciate you very, very much. I'm very happy to be here today.
You guys have a short list of accomplishments. It's actually rather unimpressive. 6.5 billion global streams, 19 number one rock hits, 15 platinum and gold singles, platinum or gold certification for every album, 10 million albums sold worldwide, and major media praise. And the band is currently named number one on Billboard's greatest of all time mainstream rock artist charts. Man, are you guys actually going to ever start like trying, or is this a half-ass effort so far?
You know, we've been talking about it for a couple of years now. Maybe we should put some effort into our career. You know, maybe we're slacking on every level. We should be doing so much better. No, man, I think it's just we all come from the dynamic of, first of all, music to us is like medicine. It's what's kept us alive. You know, one of my favorite quotes of all time is from a philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche, and he said, "Without music, life would be a mistake." And I always, for whatever reason, I've identified with that since birth, I think. But for us, music is more than just you know, what you're listening to. It becomes part of your DNA. And for us, Shinedown as a band, lyrically, we've been talking about mental health for the better part of 2 decades. And I think that you have to go through it, you have to experience it. I can't necessarily tell you that when we're writing these songs and when we're coming up with them, that we're pulling it out of thin air. There has to be something that we had either gone through, experienced, places, people, certain scenarios, situations that we've been in, we pull from that. But we've always kind of talked about sometimes you have to fall into a hole to figure out how to get out of it.
So first off to Nietzsche, dude, you said it earlier, music is the, you know, medicine for the soul for everyone. It's amazing how when a song pops on, how you'll tie that to a memory in your life of a specific event, interaction with friends. But bro, we had music blaring all the time at training events when we could, right before a mission when guys were getting ready. Again, you were listening to it on the helicopter, inserting into a mission, and then of course you take it, turn it off. But well, he's absolutely right. Without music, God, this would be a freaking boring world. Let me ask you this, dude, because it seems like, and maybe it was, you said you've been pouring into your lyrics for over 2 decades to make sure that it has a message. But thinking back to my 20s, you know, you guys were a great band, but you're naive to the world in a lot of ways. You don't know what you don't know. Do you think that process you've become more deliberate in that message through your music versus the early years?
Well, it's interesting. I have to kind of tie it back to the beginning. And the only way I know how to really dissect this or present it to you is to do it very, very honestly. So I got to be honest. If I go all the way back to the very first album for us, a very, very close friend of mine once told me, "You will get your whole life to do your first record, and if that record is successful, you'll get about 6 months to do your second one." And that was exactly what happened. And you know, fingers crossed, we were lucky with the first album. And I think about, you know, he was right. And the friend of mine that said that was actually Brad Arnold from Three Doors Down. And So they were like the first band. It's interesting because Leave a Whisper, which is the debut album, it turns 20 this year on
No
May
kidding.
27th. Yeah, and that in and of itself is astonishing to me. But yeah, the music that you grow up with, man, and like I go back to when I was like 14, 15 years old. I was heavily influenced by like punk, but like hardcore punk. Like I'm talking about the Exploited,
Yeah.
Fugazi, I mean, straight edge, not straight edge, Sex
First, hey,
Pistols.
Brent, for those that don't know, where were you born and raised?
I was born in
And
Knoxville,
you were into
Tennessee.
punk in Knoxville, Tennessee. Okay, I was
Yeah,
San Jose,
100%.
California, so punk was prevalent out there. We were trying to go to Rancid concerts and No Effects concerts and
Yeah.
Fugazi as much as possible, man. So I'm with you. You still listen to a lot of punk, or has your
Yeah, man. I mean, even to the point, like I would listen to like the Dwarves. I was listening to, I'd go all the way back to bands like Television. Just wild stuff. But the unique thing about that was during this time, I'm like 14 years old. I remember my father coming into my room, and I've got this stuff blasting, and my dad is like, "Brent, I have no idea what these people are so mad about," but I understand you're evolving, you're a kid, angst and all that. But he gave me a cassette and he said, when you get a moment, listen to this. And I was like, all right, Dad. I took it. He left the room. I threw it in the corner. About 2 weeks went by and I'm like cleaning up my room or what have you. I still see this very, very vividly. I found the tape. I grabbed the tape. I put it in a cassette player.
yeah,
I'm dating
dude,
myself. Um,
we're young. We're
it
young.
happens. Yeah, exactly. I put it in the cassette player, and what my dad didn't realize that he had done was that he completely opened up an entirely different world to me because what was on that cassette was a guy by the name of Otis Redding. And Otis Redding got me to Al Green, which got me to Percy Sledge, which got me to Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke got me to Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye got me to Nina Simone, Ella Fitzgerald, and Billie Holiday. So he opened up this world of R&B and soul music where it was the very first time that I heard people use their voice as an actual instrument. And it just kind of changed me. I was just like, I didn't even know this existed, And so that right there was something that my dad had no idea what he had done, but he did something very magical for me. He made my listening palette very vast and very broad. And so I'm always kind of looking at the peripheral. I'm not trying to be tunnel vision. When I'm a kid, I was listening to, after 14 years old, man, I was listening to anything and everything I could get my hands
Dude,
on.
I've got such a wide, eclectic taste in music. And I've actually found that I'm going more back to, and it wasn't even my roots. It was prior to my roots, like 70s, from Leonard Skinner to Fleetwood Mac to CCR. And so
Yeah.
Will Sharman, who's, running the backstage, when we do like Instagram videos of us jumping out of airplanes, he wants to, naturally the younger generation wants to put the current music. I'm like, no, go with like, Fleetwood Mac, this song, or Susie Q from CCR and throw it in there. And so I'm trying to
Yeah.
revive for the younger generation, like, hey, there was another genre of music that led to your genre, and it's still cool as hell.
I think that that's very prevalent now, especially I
Yeah,
have a 15-year-old son. So, Generation Z, the great thing about this new generation is that they don't care about a born on date with music. Like, I mean, look at Kate Bush with Stranger Things. And I mean, look at Metallica with, Master of Puppets and Stranger Things. I mean, also, too, that new series that just came out on HBO, The Last of Us, they like rekindled Linda Ronstadt. She ended up after that episode where they were playing that Linda Ronstadt track, like her streams went up something like
that's insane.
4,900%, and but I noticed that more like with the TikTok generation, also too, all of these sound bites that they use, like this generation, they don't care when a song came out. They just care if it's cool or not, or if they
So
like it.
you mentioned the Kate Bush thing with Running Up the Hill. I had forgotten about
Yeah.
that song until I saw Stranger Things, and then I went and downloaded it again. And then, bro, I'll listen.
Yeah.
I will download a song and I will listen to it for like 3 days consecutively, just on repeat. And of course, hey, you know what I'm getting annoyed with is the headphones nowadays, and your Apple phone will tell you like, hey, we suggest you turn the volume down. It's like, well, I appreciate your suggestion. I'm going to ignore that. In fact, I wish the volume would go higher on these things. But dude, I want to get into your perspective because you've been through so much. But Simple Man, what, dude? I listened to your version more than the original. What led to doing the rendition on that one?
I'll be honest with you, it's an extremely long and detailed story. I'm going to do my best to make it as kind of compact as I can because I know we only have so much time. The reality of the Simple Man rendition came out of, I don't want to necessarily say that it was an accident, but it definitely was not planned. So the original guitar player for Shinedown is a gentleman by the name of Jason Todd. And when I met Jason over 20 years ago, he had married into the Leonard Skinner family. So Ronnie Van Zant, who was the lead singer of Leonard Skinner, who passed away in the crash, his daughter Melody, that's who Jason was married to. And so Judy Van Zant, at the time when I found myself going to Jacksonville, Florida from Tennessee, working all these things out, trying to kind of put a band together and what have you, I just found myself, kind of a part of this family. And the interesting thing is that at a certain point in time when I was in Jacksonville, I ran out of money and I just didn't have, I was going to have to go back home. And I'd been down in Jacksonville for off and on about a year. Judy had found out, which was Ronnie's widow and Melody's mother. Judy had found out that I was running low on funds and what have you, and she wanted to talk to me. So I came over to her house and she said, "What's going on?" And I said, Judy, I got to either get a job or I got to get something. I don't have enough money to stay down here and live at the Comfort Inn at the beach. So without a word of anything, she gave me a key. She gave me a Post-it note with a passcode on it. And she gave me a garage door opener. And she was like, "Stay in the guest house. There's no furniture. There's not even a TV in there. It's just abandoned, but it's got heat and air and running water, and you've got a place to stay." And I said, "I can't pay you. I don't have any money." She was like, "I don't want you to pay me. I just want you to stay here, keep working with the band, do what you need to do." Fast forward about a year. And I did tell her at that time, I said, "I don't know how I'll pay you back, Judy, but I promise you I'll pay you back." She housed me rent-free for 1 year. And so what happened was we were on the road. First record had come out. We came back to Jacksonville and I sang her Simple Man. you know, um, she owned a club with her daughter called the Freebird Live. It doesn't exist anymore in Jacksonville, but at the time it did. And I sang her that one night while we were on tour. We happened to be in Jacksonville. We were playing a show, sang her that one night. That was kind of my thank you and my mindset. But the reality was we were leaving Jacksonville. We went to AAF, WAAF in Boston, which at the time was a massive radio station, and a DJ by the name of Mistress Carey. That week, she was having the bands that were coming in like do their own songs that their newest single, but also like a cover if you know it or what have you. And we tried to play some song. I can't even remember what it was. But then myself and Jason were in the studio, and Brad and Barry, the original bass player, and obviously our drummer Barry, were in the studio as well. And so Brad was like, "Play Simple Man," and I'm like, "No way!" Like, because I just learned it the night before to play it for Judy, and I was just like, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I remember the verses, the lyrics. So I did it, and they recorded it. Now you have to understand something. This is in the early days of MP3s. This is 2003. They recorded it when we did it in the studio. The phone lines like started to explode, and we left the studio, went on tour, Had a show 6 weeks later, our own show in like a small club, came back to Boston. When we came back, Mistress Carrie said, I got to show you something. And she slid a piece of paper over to me, and all it had was the number 500,000. And I was like, what is 500,000? She was like, we put what you sang, The Simple Man from Leonard Skinner, we put that on our website so people could download it. It's been downloaded in 6 weeks over 500,000 times. So what happened then was the label caught wind of it. We went to Sanford, Florida. Me and Jason cut it, just me and an acoustic with him. We stripped it back on our debut album, and it became a single. And at the time of this, Judy owned 51% of the Leonard Skinner catalog. The song became number one. It exploded the trajectory for the band. And I remember when I came back a year after that, when it became number one, I looked at her and said, I told you I'd pay you back. That's the story. Very, very, that's about as condensed as I can make it.
So the original version you cut in Boston is not the one that's on, that's now the mainstream version. You guys went and recut it.
No, we went. Yeah, you can go online and get the WAAF version, like on YouTube or whatever. But the thing about it is, we went immediately down to Sanford, Florida, when we saw this. Obviously, the label was like, you've got to go record that. And so we went. But here's the thing. We cut it in 3 takes. I think Jason did like one pass, 2 or 3. He did like 2 or 3 passes on the guitar. We didn't overthink it. And I didn't go in there and try to emulate what I did in Boston. I just sang the song the way that I would sing it, not taking anything away from Ronnie. But if you listen to Skinner's version and you listen to our version, I kind of made it my own, and some people appreciate that, and some diehards are like, you shouldn't do that or what have you. But I think that's why it connected with people, was because I wasn't trying to make a carbon copy of something. And it wasn't a planned thing that happened. It just kind of happened.
I see that differently. I take that as a compliment. If someone cites somebody cites something out of my book and uses it for their game, it doesn't bother me at all. I take that. I always like to say that plagiarism is the highest form of flattery. Not that you guys plagiarized, but that's an awesome story, man. Let's talk about leadership, because you're probably one of the few frontman singers I've ever met that likes to talk about overcoming, challenges, perseverance, tenacity. You talk a lot about your personal experiences, which I always take, and I say this on every podcast. Vulnerability is one of the most, the highest forms of moral courage, in my opinion, and it does not mean you're weak. And you've done that with your addiction and all that you've learned. But more so, you guys have been talking about mental health, but let's be honest, before it actually became the hot topic that it is today. So you've been talking about it for roughly 2 decades, where if someone mentioned mental health to me in the early 2000s, I've been like, what the fuck are you talking about? Man, talk to me about.
Well, we're roughly the same age, and I think we're what would be considered Generation X. Some people have said that we're the most dangerous generation, because we were like, you didn't have like therapy when we were growing up necessarily, and it was kind of like you were told, really, in a lot of ways, like, just figure it out. You're gonna have to just figure it out. And then we were right on the cusp at the beginning of like dial up in the internet, where we had enough skills for our own understanding of the world and how the world can throw different obstacles in front of you. But yeah, every generation is different. Millennials aren't like Generation X. Baby boomers aren't like Generation Z. It all depends on how you look at it. But yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, I was very fortunate. I had a very, very loving family, a very understanding mother, a very understanding dad. My grandparents were like a huge part of my work ethic. My granny, which is my mother's mother, who is still alive today, I got my work ethic from her. But that's kind of how I was raised. Wasn't to like push down, your feelings, but that you had to use it as fuel. You couldn't let it like eat you alive. You had to figure out a way to overcome it. And in some cases, you wouldn't always win, but you never ever stop trying. That was a lot of like how I was raised. Like, don't quit. Whatever you do, don't quit.
So I know with Planet Zero, the new album One hits on a number of fronts in terms of the lyrics, trying to speak to American mainstream society. From, I don't want to say you guys attacked the woke culture, unless you're gonna say that, but basically, don't shut off dialogue, don't shut off conversations, be receptive to what people think, so that a dialogue and eventually solutions can come out of it. But
well, we wrote the record in the middle of a pandemic. So it was, and a lot of things were brought to the forefront during that pandemic that weren't just about the pandemic. I'm the biggest, more than anything, a lot of what it was about was maintaining that do not silence your freedom of speech. Like, I want to know what you think. I don't want somebody to be silenced because maybe they have different beliefs than I do, or they think differently than I do. I want to be able to have a dialogue and be constructive. And that was the biggest principle of it all, was this ideology of trying to silence people and what they believed in, and also tell the truth. At the end of the day, just tell the truth.
When I heard a good quote, when you tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said.
There you go, man. You just said it.
So, one, I don't want to turn this into a political speech, but you do talk about empathy. At what point?
Yeah.
So yeah, you said it. Gen X is not exactly setting the best example for the next generation, and the next generation being different is not a bad thing. That means we're evolving. But
no, not at all.
At what point did we lose our civility and empathy for people with dissenting opinions? Because it just seems like, you're shut down right away.
It has a lot to do. Well, ultimately, I mean, I got to put it, right there at the forefront. I mean, it has a lot to do with how me and you are communicating right now. Look, I often will tell my son this. Again, my son is 15 years old. He has a smartphone. He's extremely technologically savvy. He knows more stuff about an iPhone than I do. But the thing that I always tell him is, I want you to know that this device that you have is a tool, and it can be used for so many different things. And a lot of what it can be used for is positive, but it can also be very, very destructive. What I don't want you to lose sight of is this. You are in control of the device. The device doesn't need to be in control of you. And so I think for all of us, a lot of where all of a sudden it became, hang on a second, everybody is starting to lose really their compassion for each other and their empathy for each other, because social media is it's the wild, wild west. You know what I mean? It's just, it's crazy. Like, what, kids at a young age, what they actually can see, you know what I mean? At an early age, stuff that we never saw, at our age. Like, I mean, it's insane. But here's the thing about that. There's two sides to that. Because any question that you have, anything that you want to know about, any kind of main acknowledgement, like, you can take your phone out and ask it, how do I perform, how do I take someone's appendix out? You know what I mean? Like, how do I, what's the, mathematical problems, things about history. You got to fact check it a lot of times, but the device can be used in a lot of good ways. But I think the empathy, you start to become numb. Like, your mindset, when you see things that are happening out in the world and you see it on this device and this screen, and it just numbs your perception of the world. I'll often tell people, man, put it down and go outside. Just leave it and go outside for a minute. It's wild to watch people, if they leave their phone somewhere or they don't know where they put it, they go into a panic attack. You know what I mean? It's
So,
crazy.
I just released this book, The Everyday Warrior. I was on an expedition. I was actually in Antarctica when it released, but we talk about social media, and I just love how you said that it's a two-sided coin. There's some great things about social media that I can watch what's going in with former brothers in arms who may be in New York when I'm in Texas, and I'm watching their smile with their family, and that's awesome. But that thing
Yeah.
is all consuming. And so for this generation that grew
Mm-hmm.
up with it, uh, by the time they were 70, on average, they will have spent 6 years of their life on social media. 6 years. Somebody can become a pretty good guitar player in 6 years. Somebody could start a business in 6 years and get it profitable. That's a massive amount of time. So what I said is do this one thing, and this is hard because I'll tell you one more thing. Is come the weekend, turn your social media off. Go live your adventure with your buddies,
Yeah.
your family, your spouse, and then turn it back on Monday. And if you want to post about your adventure, do it. But if you can just train
Right.
yourself, it's like Pavlov's dog, to just put that phone down and turn
Yeah.
social media off on the weekend, bro, for your mental and spiritual
Yeah.
health, it is huge. But the funniest thing, Brett, when in Antarctica, we had zero Wi-Fi, zero cellular.
Yeah. I was gonna say, what is
So believe it
Antarctica
or not,
like?
there was some dudes from actually one, Tyler from Starlink. So they connected the camp for the first time ever with Wi-Fi, and they also tested
Oh,
it
okay.
on top of Mount Vincent. Um, and funny, you would catch guys, to include myself, where you still have your phones on you because you want to know the time and stuff like that. But I would see guys as we're sitting around a table eating or uh, drinking coffee, they would pick it up. It was habitual. They'd pick it up to see what was on social media, and they're like, "Oh yeah," and they put it down. And even after 9 days, they didn't break that. You see them picking it up. It's
Yeah.
those things are addictive.
I actually have never heard it the way that you just presented it, though. That's actually a really, really good way of looking at it because the weekends, historically through time, that's your weekend. That's your time to kind of relax, be with your family and what have you. You know what? That's a really good method if you can do it, which is just you still have your phone, but you just don't look at the social media. On Saturdays and Sundays, you just like after Friday, just don't look at it. You can pick it up on Monday. It's not like it's going
We're
anywhere.
about to start a live podcast with four other dudes who are hilarious. John Wellborn, who played in the NFL, two MMA guys, and then one guy who was a former SEAL, but now like a renowned human performance doctor. And we're going to tell people, hey, this Friday evening, sign off, go live your life as a reminder.
Yeah.
And we do it in the book. But when you're talking to your son, I can tell you are a devoted father, and you're trying to pass lessons on. That's the point. Leading kids is no different than leading a
Yeah.
band in your guys. You're trying to develop the people below you. What are
And I also let him
Of
teach me
course.
too. That's the other thing, man. Like I that's sometimes, the old guard is like, I'm the boss, I'm the dad. When you're 18, you can do whatever you want, but right now, what I say goes. I'm not necessarily like that. We communicate back and forth with each other. He teaches me a great deal,
I
actually.
will mirror that. I'll say the relationship with my children. They're located in Virginia Beach. I'm in Texas. Went through an awful divorce. I'm not in that position to be do as I say type of guy. So I do have conversations, but
Hmm.
dude, their EQ for their age is they're 10 years ahead of me in terms of emotional intelligence, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty impressed with that.
Pretty wild.
You've been through a lot, brother, especially the addiction, man. And I know once you got back into fitness, you lost 70 pounds. That's insane.
Hmm.
What 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 are those 3 to 5 things that you're trying to teach your son? Those lessons you're imparting, because again, you never know it's going to be your last day. But what are the primary things you're trying to reinforce with him?
The biggest thing, probably, I don't have them in,
Yeah,
three, 4, 5 different things. I don't have them in any specific order. One of the main things that I focus primarily with him on is ultimately believing in yourself. Like there are going to be moments in your life where like you're not going to have people around you, and it's going to have to come from you. And that's going to be through experience and trial and error. And that's okay. Like, you're not going to win everything that you go after every time you go after it. But probably the biggest focus with him is that I don't want him to be afraid of his failure. Like, I tell him all the time, do not be afraid to fail, kid. Because here's the thing, you gotta have those moments to fail so that you know what to do next time, or do you know how to grow and how to get to the next level? Because your life and your legacy is not going to be built by your failure. Your life and your legacy is going to be built by the fact that you refuse to give up. And another element to that is I try to teach him how to lead from the front and try to be the hardest worker in the room and surround himself with like-minded people. As he gets older, he wants to know a little bit more about how I got where I am and where I'm going, and more about the band. Because I think that there's something that I should touch on here for people that may not know the ins and outs, of my relationship with my son. And there's a reason for that, because it's a personal relationship between me and my son. But the thing is from the moment he was born, I've never made it about me. So when I'm with him, because I'm on the road 280 days out of the year, and it's been like that since he was born. And I've had him on the road with me when he was younger, and he's been to different countries with me and things of that nature. But as he started to develop, and he got, like, by the time he was like 10 years old, moving into, 12, 13, becoming a teenager, a young man, it's just been very, very important that when I'm in front of him, like when I'm physically in front of him, I'm very lucky that we have this technology like FaceTime. I can see him, because a lot of times he doesn't want to talk to me on the phone. He doesn't want to text me. He wants to FaceTime me, which I have absolutely no problem with. But the thing is that I make it about him because he's in the development stages in his life. And so he doesn't really ask a lot about the band. His friends, and even some of his friends' parents, they kind of know who his dad is, but I also don't offer myself up either. Um, I'm there to do whatever I need to do to make sure that he is getting everything that he needs from a physical standpoint and from a mental standpoint as his father. Um, but a lot of it all ties into that. Like I said, I'm trying to teach him to believe in himself, to have confidence in himself, to not beat himself up. As long as he's trying at everything he's going after, you're not going to win everything. Don't let it get in your head. He's a really, really, it's pretty wild to watch. He's the only freshman in his high school that's on the freshman and the junior varsity basketball team. So he, I'm 5'8". He's 15. I'm 45. He's already 6'1". And I hope he doesn't stop growing, because he very much is looking at a future. And he's up every morning at 4 a.m. He'll throw 300. He'll throw 300 shots up before he goes to the bus stop. I mean, basketball. He's looking, at the NBA. It's something. I mean, the dude sleeps with a basketball. So I mean, I want him to stay focused on that. But I just try to teach him, how to be mentally tough, but at the same time, he's not afraid to cry. And that was something that I told him at a young age too. I said, man, don't be afraid. Like, if you need to cry, cry it out. If anything, let it go. Don't keep that inside, man. Like, you've got to release that, because it will eat you from the inside out.
God, who said it? It was a basketball coach that actually said it. I'm trying to remember his name. He passed away from cancer. Think, laugh, and cry every single day. And
I know exactly
Coach
who you're talking
Coach
about.
V,
I can't
right?
think of his name. Yeah, I think so.
This whole, this whole thing with crying. There's nothing like a good cry. There's nothing like good cry. And I've been a part of it, where there's a circle of SEALs hugging one another, and they're just bawling, and that's okay, man. That's okay. You just need that every once in a while. Get it out.
It's like, dude, it's like shedding your skin and coming up new. You know what I mean? Like, for the longest time, there was this, like, keep it in, don't cry, don't, be a man. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, that corrodes you. Like, the whole point of crying and getting it out when it's emotional, whether it's sad or happy. You know what I mean? Like, that's the beautiful, what the body is, like the way we're designed. I mean, I learned a lot about this during the pandemic. I learned a lot about the human body. I did a lot of research. The design of our body, it's a masterpiece. The way that it's put together, it's by design. Crying is so you can release that energy and be refreshed from it. You know what I mean? Like, if you just keep it in, it just corrodes your inside. You got to let it go, man.
It was I wouldn't say a crying fit, but I remember the specific moment. I was with my kids in a Disney film. Was it The Croods? A specific scene where they're asleep because
Yeah.
God, what were they? They were like 5 and 8 at the time, and so they're passed out, overdosed on popcorn. And I'm in the theater and I just
Right.
start bawling. That was also the realization. I'm like, okay, something's off. I'm not right. And that's when I started talking to someone. That was the best choice I've ever made. It was not a quick process, but I know you've been down that. Do you ever use your music? Because I know you talk a lot about, or you guys within the lyrics talk about the ups and downs of life. Do you ever use your music with your son? Like, hey, go listen to this song and look at the lyrics, man. Or do you not try to mix those two?
I don't necessarily do that specifically with my son. I do know, just because me and his
Yep.
mother were never married,
Mm-hmm.
but we have a good relationship with each other. And oddly enough, his mother's mother, his nana, his grandmother on his mom's side, she has told me before that when she's in the car with him or what have you, if they're driving around and they're listening to the radio and I come on, um, he will, a lot of times he'll turn it up and they'll like listen to it. Like, it'll be background noise, and then if he hears my voice, he'll turn it up. But I've never really told him to, like, go specifically and listen to our music. I kind of leave that up to him in a lot of ways. He has a different kind of musical taste anyway. But I mean, the good thing is that will always be there for him in the future,
Yeah.
as he gets older and he, starts to mature. And, I think that once again with him, I want you to be a
Yeah.
kid. You can
Yeah.
you got plenty of time to be an adult, man. You know what I mean? I want you to be a kid right now.
There's a great line from the new version of the movie Dune. I know they're coming out with a second part where the father looks at the son, says, "Hey, whether you choose to be the ruler of our family or not, is your choice. All I ever needed you to be was my son. That's all I ever needed you to be." And totally stole that line and used it with my son. But hey, plagiarism is the highest form of flattery, and that's the truth. Uh, I had a great guest on. His name is Dr. Johnny Kim. I happened to go through SEAL training with him. We ended up at the same team. This guy came from a highly abusive situation where his father was abusive. His father ended up getting killed by the police department when he was 18. And we never knew that. But,
Oh my God.
he talked about he and his dad had a very different definition of success. And he talked about, with your
Right.
children, all I want them to know is this: a lot of the things that you're trying to reinforce, you've got to define what success looks like for yourself, but it's got to involve not being afraid to fail, believing in yourself, leading from the front, putting the work in. And if you do that, then
Yeah.
if it's being a pianist, because this guy's now an astronaut, Dr. Johnny Kim, a doctor, a professional sports player, then that's your decision to make. I found that extremely, extremely powerful, man.
Yeah,
So
man.
let's talk about the Revolutions Live tour coming up, and
Yeah.
Planet Zero, man. We'll close out with this. COVID was nobody got through COVID clean. It impacted. I don't care if you want to be the tough guy or not.
No.
It made everyone reflect and reassess. What's your
Yeah.
intent with Planet Zero? If you want to drive something home, if you want the people to listen to it and take things away, and with this tour, What does this all mean to you guys? Because I know this has been a long process for you guys for this album.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest element of it was once again the way that we felt during this time. And you got to remember something. I remember when I arrived um, to Charleston with Eric, our bass player, who's also the producer, engineer, and the mixer of Planet Zero. He's also the producer, engineer, and the mixer of the last album, Attention, Attention. But when I arrived at the height of the pandemic, I left California in June of 2020.
As in moved?
Got to Charleston.
Up and moved?
Well, see, I was in California at the beginning of 2020, January, working on a side project with me and the guitar player Zach Myers called Smith and Myers. So we were in the middle of writing this double album, and then the pandemic happened, and so I had to shutter where I was because of the whole thing was, hey, we just need 15 days to flatten the curve. 15 days turned into 15 months. So by the time I was in, it was June 1st, and I said, to management and everybody, and we had hooked up with an amazing organization called Direct Relief,
Yep.
raised $500,000 with them for COVID-19 response. But then through the label and management, I was just like, I've got to get out of here, guys. Like, I can't just stay here. I've got to get to my guys. I've got to get out of here. And that was wild. Not to go off topic here, but I arrived in Terminal 5 at LAX, which is the international terminal where I went out. Me and the attendant were the only people we were the only, I have video of it. Like, I remember walking in and like, this is a city in this airport. In Terminal 5 in LAX, that is a city. And me and the attendant that gave me my ticket were the only people in there. And so I arrived in Charleston, and me and Eric started to work on material, and we had this idea of like, let's try to think 3 years ahead. Let's try to have like a crystal ball method. And we tried that for like a day, and it did not work because we're trying to write like this isn't going on and this isn't happening, and it just is not. There was just no way around it. And I remember Eric looked at me with everything that was going on the television, everything that was going on in the world. There was a lot going on, man. And I remember Eric looking at me and he said, "It feels like we are on planet zero." And that's where it started. But I think it's important to understand what we learned from that also is everyone talks about the internet being undefeated. It's not true. Yeah. Mother Nature is undefeated.
It always will
be. That's another, and that's an element about what the album represents. Like, you only have a short amount of time on this planet. You know what I mean? Like, you only have a finite amount of time and you're not promised tomorrow. Stop with this idea that everything has to go to 11 all the time. Stop with just trying to be that dynamic of not wanting to miss out, that you have a device that you're looking at where you don't know if it's telling you the truth, if it's made up, is it real, is it false, is it benefiting you, is it hurting you? You've got to ask questions, of course, but the whole record is about our society and that we have to take care of one another, and we all have to be accountable for each other as well. We all are related to each other in some way. We all came from the same principle. We all came from the same part of the universe. I will dispute it with anybody that tells me otherwise. Like, well, I didn't come from you, and I'm not related to this, and that's not related to me. No, man, it's all connected. All of it is. And we want people to be able to ask questions. We want people to be able to learn from one another, but you also have to tackle really, really tough subjects sometimes. And you need to allow the other person to speak. Like, even if you disagree with them, have a conversation, try to make it constructive. It doesn't have to escalate into being violent or disruptive. Everybody's different. But the only way forward, in our personal opinion, as a band and as four guys that are very much family and very much brothers, the only way forward truly is together. We all inhabit this planet, with all the other organisms and the creatures, around us as well. There's a respect that has to be involved in that as well. And ultimately, we don't want people to lose their humanity or their empathy for each other, because we do believe that human beings are inherently good. That being said, you also have to protect yourself and the people around you. But for me, with everything I see in the world today, I see a lot of people kind of on their knees because they don't know how to handle their feelings and what they're feeling inside. If you see somebody out there and you see that they're on their knees, or they're on one knee even, instead of walking past them, maybe consider helping them and pick them up. That's a lot of what it's built around, man, is respecting each other and trying to be there for one another.
Yeah, this is a topic for a much longer conversation. The divisiveness is, bro, I hate to be the guy that ties everything back to the military, but you know what? The one thing I did respect about it is it didn't matter if you're black, white, straight, or gay, Democrat or Republican. Like, nobody cared. Nobody
None of
cared,
that
man.
should matter.
It's what, we were under one flag. You saw people for the merit of their character. That's what I respected. And we've got a real leadership problem within this nation. And you talk about accountability, dude. You know what?
Yeah.
Holding somebody accountable. Well, first it starts with you. You got to be able to hold yourself accountable before you can hold others accountable. And I know you agree with that. I'm preaching to the choir, but accountability is a hard conversation. How I reframe it because I do leadership development for companies, is I say, guys, go back to parenting again. One of the highest forms of compassion or love is accountability. If you see your son or daughter do something wrong, what do? You don't hesitate to pull them over, and hopefully in a professional and tactful way, without yelling, you say, hey, listen, what you just did there, why'd you make that decision? Do you feel it was the right decision? No, it wasn't the right decision. Now, how are you going to change that moving forward? I mean, ultimately, as a parent, what do you want? You want your kids to be good, competent human beings who contribute to society, impact others around them, and ultimately they have to be self-sustainable, because they're you can't keep them in the coop forever. How excited are you guys about this tour and getting that message out there? I got to imagine going on tour, you're just smoked by the end of it.
Man, well, no, I mean, we work really, really hard, but the good thing is, 20 years of doing it and doing it professionally, you have to keep your eyes and ears open at all times, because there is a way to do it productively. We have a staff when we're doing these bigger shows. Our staff has grown to about, when you count the band and everybody involved with the buses and the trucks and everything all together, we have a staff of roughly 77 people. And then we've got two other bands a lot of times when we're doing these tours and what have you, and then they have a staff. So any given day, we're responsible for roughly 180 people per show. It's a big, you're building a city, man, and, and creating this environment for people. But for us, it's a huge part of what we do. The live aspect of our shows are what we're known for, because we're always trying to outdo what we've already done and make it exciting for people. But our main mission with the audience is, if they walked into the venue, the fairgrounds, the festival, wherever we're playing, the goal for us is, if you walked in, we want to try and have you float out, So it's always just about lifting people up and making, I still, to this day, man, like, my granny once told me, she said, find something that you love more than anything in the world, and you'll never work a day in your life. I will tell you, it's a lot of work, but it is a labor of love. And I still am very humbled and grateful. And I take it, I don't ever take it for granted, man, that I truly get to do what I love for a living. And honestly, Mike, I'll tell you this too. Feel very, very fortunate that from the moment I entered the earth, I always knew what I wanted to do. Like I'm doing today, ever since I can remember. I wanted to be a singer and a songwriter and a performer, and that's what I'm able to do. So,
and for that
I'm
reason,
very
you
lucky.
are blessed, because there's a lot of people out there, especially with COVID, that made them reassess, and quite frankly, they don't know where their next passion is. And sometimes that's fine, dude. You're going to figure it out. Just be iterative. So the tour starts April 3rd in Saginaw, Michigan.
Yep.
Ends September
Yep.
7th, 10th in Virginia at the International Raceway. Let me ask you this, dude, because one, you look good. I mean that.
Thanks.
You stay on top of your fitness and diet. When you're on the road, I'm assuming you guys are on a tour bus, correct?
Yeah.
All right.
Multiple buses.
Do you do like a body scan before you leave, and when you come back, no?
Nah, like you always know, like this is how I know I'm in my fighting weight. My pants 32-30. As long as I got a couple of thumbs in between the 32, I'm good to go. I
So,
know I
but
look
again,
good.
20 years on the road, do you have a system down? Do you have a trainer that's saying, okay, hey man, you're probably not going to get to a gym every day. Do you guys bring some travel stuff, or do you make it a point?
Well, that's the thing. Because we've been doing it for so long, we're able to. So this particular tour, most tours we're running between 6 to 12 buses. So there is always one bus. Once it is dumped for the day, it becomes what we call the yard. And so that truck becomes the yard. So there's a heavy bag in there, there's an elliptical, there's an assault bike, there's a treadmill in there, there's multiple weights in there, there's kettlebells in there, there's resistance bands, mats on the floor. We all try to get in there all together a lot of times, and we'll do AMRAP or we'll do circuit or we'll do Tabata, and we just do it with each other more than anything. And then as far as the diet is concerned out there, most of the time we're really fortunate to carry catering. But you just advance it. You try to give everybody a little bit of something. You always make sure there's 2 proteins. There's always a pasta. There's always a vegan and a vegetarian option. There's always a salad bar. So it's kind of one of those things where you know how to eat right. You know what I mean? So, we keep cookies and cakes and stuff out there for people that want them and what have you. But there's always juicers and what. But just doing this over time, you learn that. We kind of, speaking of the military, we kind of run it like a military out there, just with how active we are. And, we're essentially working out 2 times a day to be able to do what we do on stage. Because, especially in the summertime, what we'll end up doing is when you're in those hotter states and you're starting to cook around 90, 100 degrees, you start talking about touring amphitheaters or festivals right in the middle of June to basically the end of August, early September. We will hotbox ourselves in those trucks every day. So it's like double the heat in there. We're usually working out by no later than 4 o'clock. The workouts are usually an hour to an hour and a half. And then, we're drenched. And then I need to eat by 6 o'clock because I'm usually on stage by 9. I have to have 3 hours before I go on stage. And if we didn't do that, if we didn't work out like that, if we weren't, have that kind of mobility and what have you, we wouldn't be able to do, quite frankly, at our age, what we do on stage. I've always looked at age as like a number, but you have to be conditioned to do it, man.
Yeah, with regards to the workouts, are you guys coming up with those, or do you have somebody that sort of is pushing you?
We all, like each guy will get, and our videographer will get in there with us too, Sanjay. So sometimes, we'll have other crew members. They'll come in if everybody knows like 4 o'clock every day we're in there. So like if you want to come in and do it with us, you can. But like we'll rotate it. So Eric may come up with it one day, Barry might come up with it the next day, Zach may come up with it the next day. They may all look at me, with a week of shows and be like, we don't want to think, Brent, just come up with something every day, and then I'll put it together. But yeah, it's very much we're all
dude, if you're up for it, I'm looking at the locations. If Men's Journal received an invite to come film one of your workouts, we would love to do it.
Yeah.
And may stick around for the show if those ticket extended.
Bring it on, man.
I've got a few last questions, and we close it out in a traditional way. Do you guys hate Texas? What the hell, man?
No, we played Texas last year. We did Irving, Texas last year. We did Houston. We did Dallas. We just don't have any Texas on this run at the moment. We've got another part of the year. This is not the only tour we're doing. Is April 3rd through May 9th, I think is what it is. But no, we love Texas.
All right, we're gonna hold you to that. Bozeman, Montana. We will be there if we have an invite from you, sir.
You 1000% have an invite, and you got carte blanche, man. We got the red carpet laid out. Whatever show you want to come to, man. At any point in time, bring it on.
Be wary of the invites you extend. So, Brent, we're all concerned about our legacy, and your legacy is cemented. But what does that mean to you? Is when your time comes and you look back on your life, what would you hope people think that's what he stood for, and that's the message he sent, and this is what I learned from
him? It's such an interesting question. I got asked a question one time that was, you've had your moment and you've gone to the great beyond, and there you stand in front of God. What would you like him to say to you? And I said, I would like him to say, go back. You're not done. So my demise, if you will, and some people look at that word as like, well, that's like, we're all going to pass away. It's part of life. I think if anything, a legacy is not only what you contributed while you were alive, but it's the impact that you left on people. And once again, the biggest impact that I would want that came from me to the people around me and to the people out, on this planet and beyond is no matter what, believe in yourself. Like, at the end of the day, you come into this world alone in a lot of ways, and you're going to leave the same way. But we're all made up of energy. This is a shell more than anything. It's funny because sometimes people will talk about when someone passes away and they're at the funeral, and they'll talk about, I can't believe they're gone. Isn't it so sad that they're gone? And I tend to disagree with that because I look at it like this: they're not gone, they're everywhere. So I don't know if you necessarily ever really die. Yeah, man. It's all in your perception, but more than anything, I hope that people will say that I was a vessel for encouragement and believing in yourself, and ultimately leading from the front, and do the best to be the hardest worker in the room and surround yourself with like-minded people.
Powerful words. And no, if the living left an impact, then you definitely, the dead don't die. Well, Brent, we're going to spread the message about this tour. I'll contact your team about Bozeman.
Thank you.
Because I've got a crew of some special operations guys that would love to come and get a workout with you on that day if it's available.
Dude, you have an open invitation at any time, man, for you and whoever you want to bring, man. I'm telling you right now, like, you got carte blanche, red carpet all the way.
Brother.
Anytime.
Means the world. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you for the music that was on my iPod again, in those combat zones, man. You talk about impact, you have, even if it gave me just a brief minute of relaxation before turning it back on, man. So for everyone, thanks for joining us, the Men's Journal Everyday Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sarraille. Until next time.